going to show you today how we went from this raw MIDI drum track to this. Hey everyone, so today what I wanted to do was walk you through the production for the song Cauterized by Julia Goff. I had the pleasure of working with her all the way from when this was just a scratch demo track with an acoustic vocal and kind of a canned drum machine loop, all the way through mixing. I did everything except for the mastering on this. So yeah, I just wanted to show you how I mixed it, how I produced it, and yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments or message me, or if you're interested in working together or just getting some additional information, about what I'm doing, feel free to visit joshnewmanmusicproductions.com. So yeah, I'm going to show you today how we went from this raw MIDI drum track to this. So obviously a lot of processing happened between those two steps, but let's get started with kind of the raw MIDI track. So we're using Superior Drummer 3 here, and this is just the bass library. There's no expansions or anything that I'm using. We're using the Pearl 20-inch Masterworks for the kick, the Tama Bell Brass for the snare, and the Yamaha Beaches for the rack and floor tom, and then an assortment of cymbals. If you're interested in that stuff, let me know and I can get you the details. And then have a very broken down, simple kind of mixer here. We're only using the kick in, then snare top, bottom, toms, one hi-hat, an overhead, stereo overhead, the condenser version within Superior Drummer, and then two sets of room mics. We're using the left and right, and then the center. I don't actually believe I ended up using the center. So, yeah, that's kind of the raw sounds that we're getting here. This was all programmed. So we took those, printed them down into raw audio tracks, and then I just processed them like normal. So I turned all of the processing off. So there's no EQ, no compression going on within here other than what's baked into the samples already. And then I am also going to turn off our bus processing, because the way that I have this going here is that all of the drum channels are feeding into a main drum bus and a parallel compression bus called the crush bus. And then finally, I have a little bit of processing going on this is what I call my live drums, or this is kind of all drums, even though these aren't live. These are all of my drums that are not part of like little loops or things like that. So the only other things that are going into a bus is I have a kick bus with the raw sample and then my own sample, and then a snare bus happening where I've got the snare top, snare bottom from Superior, and then a snare sample happening as well. So, yeah, let's dive right into the kick sound. So first of all, I'm going to turn off all of my bus processing for this, so you can kind of hear the raw sounds, and then we'll go into bus processing later. So first of all, my kick bus, again, I have a little bit of bus processing happening. And I'm going to mute the crush bus as well, my parallel compression bus. So all you're hearing is the raw kick sound from Superior right now. And here's what we got. All right, so that's the raw kick in mic. And what we're doing here is, first of all, SSL channel. I use this on almost everything. We're cutting everything below 40 and above 12K. And then we're starting to get this kind of smiley face EQ curve going on by boosting 8K and 60 hertz as well, to get some of that sub and some of that high-end click that's going to help us cut through the track. Then in this particular sample, I felt like the 3K region was a little bit too prominent. and I wanted to fill that in with kind of some other sounds. So I end up cutting that a good bit while also cutting the 500, and that's a really typical low-mid cut for a kick drum. So, and then finally on the SSL, we're also using the compressor with a slow attack, fast release at a 3-to-1 ratio. And what we're doing here is doing about 3 to 6 dB of compression, and we're emphasizing the beginning, the kind of attack portion of the kick drum, so that it feels like it hits a little bit harder. So without SSL, and now with the SSL channel engaged, so a lot more beef, a little bit more clarity in the top end. And then what we wanted to do after that is add some tape saturation. This not only rounds out kind of the attack to make it to where it's still present, but not quite as aggressive. But it also saturation, just think of it as more of what's already there. And so this is going to be very subtle. A lot of these saturation moves are very subtle, but they stack on top of each other to make a pretty big difference. So without saturation, and with it. So again, pretty subtle move, and it is a little woofy as well. So that's what this final EQ is. It's big cuts in the low mids at 150 and 260. So I'm gonna just play it without and with. So that really cleans up that sound, gives it that nice scooped kick sound that we're all looking for in kind of the rock and metal genres. Then we're going to move on to our kick sample, which is a very bright, clicky sample and also has some sub. So it's really, really scooped, really bright, really clicky. So here's what we're dealing with. And then going in with SSL, not really doing actually anything on there. It looks like I just had that on there because I have it on kind of as an insert on just about every track. But the main thing we're doing is adding saturation. So without it, and then with it. Oop. So just a little bit of saturation, and then we blended that in. I'm going to play it with just the raw kick in, and then I'm going to add this sample in. So not only does this give us a little bit of clarity, but it also gives it some weight. So I almost view this as like a good bit of the mid-range of the kick drum, and then this is more of like the nice beefy low end, clear crisp high end. But then we emphasized it even more by adding another SSL channel under the kick bus. So again, making more of a smiley face EQ by going up at 8K, boosting a little bit of smack at 2.5, and then boosting a little bit more of the 120 as well, which is an octave up from that sub 60 hertz that we did earlier. And so without it, here's what we got. Now with it. And then just a little bit more saturation. So without it. With it. And that is it for our kick sound. Moving on, let's go check out the snare. And there's quite a bit going on here. So let's mute our snare bus processing. And then I'm going to take all the processing off of these. And that includes, I'm going to turn off my snare reverbs as well. And here's what we have as a raw snare sound. I'm also going to mute my sample. So this is straight out of Superior Drummer. This is what we got. So nothing special there. Pretty standard MIDI snare sound. On the snare top, which is kind of the majority of our raw sound here. We're doing a nice 8K boost, filtering out everything below 90 as well. And then adding a little smack at 2.5. And I'm also actually cutting at 2.5 as well, but on a much narrower Q. So what I'm doing is I'm taking out some of that nastiness very narrowly, well, as narrowly as an SSL channel can get, and then I'm boosting the whole thing to keep some of the smack and attack while cutting out that specific frequency that is getting to be a little bit too much when I boost that whole section. And then finally, a nice, healthy 220 boost, anywhere in that like 180, 220, maybe a little bit higher. Anywhere in that range is a nice, beefy sound on your snare drum. And then finally, we're doing some 3-to-1 compression with a slow attack, fast release. Again, emphasizing the beginning of the hit. So here's without it. And with it. So as you can tell, it makes a huge difference with just those initial SSL channel moves. And then we're doing 2 different types of saturation. I loved using this tape head here pretty aggressively on snares, especially MIDI snares. They sound kind of fake and robotic, and they lose a lot of the ring and stuff. So I find this really adds that ring and that kind of natural sound back. So here's without it. And with it. So add some nice smack and some nice ring. And then same thing with Escalator. It's just another saturation by Black Salt Audio, which does something nice to like the low mids and kind of that sizzling high end. So without it. Now with it. So again, subtle saturation moves stacked on top of each other make a big difference. And this is a kind of a final move that I decided after listening to the mix, which was to add another 2 dB of 8K after the saturation. So now let's go ahead and check out our snare bottom, which is a very basic snare bottom sound straight out of Superior Drummer. Now, added silencer here. Normally, you would only use this on live drums, but for me, what I was doing is I wanted to take away some of the kick that was kind of put into the printed snare bottom sound, and I wanted to shorten the snare bottom sound just a little bit. So yeah, without it, here's what we're looking at. And now with silencer engaged. So a lot tighter. It's more of like a sound design thing rather than a true gate that I'm using. Then as with the top, we're doing a big high-end boost, this time at 10K instead of 8, also rolling off everything below 100. Taking out some of the boxiness at 700. And the big difference here is that we're doing a fast attack and a higher ratio on our compressor. And what this is going to do is it's going to squash the front end and release it very quickly so that the front is de-emphasized and you get more of kind of a splatty, lengthened snare bottom sound. So here's without the SSL channel. And then with it. So nice, sizzly, clean snare bottom sound that we had in at about, it's very, very low in the mix, but together, here they are. And then also adding in the sample. Samples are huge when it comes to MIDI drums, using third-party samples because it can make it sound unique and really add some of that life into it that was previously missing. So here's the sample by itself. It's nice bright crack going on there. And we're going to really mangle this sound actually, because what I really wanted was the beefy low end of it. And so I'm actually filtering out everything over 5K. That's the nice thing about samples is you can do whatever you want to them. So we're taking out everything above 5K, taking some boxiness away at 910, and boosting that low end 200 a lot. So here's with the SSL channel. It's just a nice beefy sound that when we add it back into the kind of the raw snare sound, we get that nice beefy low end. I'm going to start it without it and then slowly blend it in. So there you go. All right. Then the bus processing on the snare. Here we are doing just a little bit more that's actually affecting all three of these coming in here and filtering out everything under 100, boosting 8K, adding a little bit more smack at 2.5, cleaning up that 900 range again. And so without it and with it. So a nice, bright, beefy snare sound. Then let's go over our verbs that we use. So first of all, I use a gated verb. And this one is pretty synthetic, but it does make the low mids kind of give them a little bit of an ambience that I really like. So there you go. Some nice, quick, low end beef and ambience kind of in there. And then for the length of the snare reverb, we're using the snare plate. And so that one, I'm going to turn my gated off and let you hear just the snare plate. And for those, I'm using the Verb Suite Classics. This is the Bricasti. This is the Bricasti impulse responses using snare plate B at 911 milliseconds for the plate. And for the gated, I'm using the Gady 80s drums 320 nonlinear gated verb here. So in the mix, or at the levels that I had them in the mix, here's what we get. So a nice long tail, nice beefy impact on the snare. And with the kick and snare together, I really enjoy that. Here's what we get. There you go. Then let's move on to our toms. Tom processing is very simple, but very crucial, just kind of carving out a lot of the mids and trying to leave that attack in there. So again, silencer is here to kind of give us sound design and kind of shorten up that sound a little bit. So here's without silencer. Actually, here's without everything. So very raw tom sound. Adding silencer in just shortens it up a little bit, makes it a little cleaner. And then SSL channel on both of these is very similar, which is why I'm kind of going through them together. For the tom 1, we're cutting everything below 40 and everything above 11K. And I'm doing a huge shelf boost, well, a big shelf boost based on the range that I'm at about 3.6K, just to give more attack. Cutting out a lot of the boxy 600 range and cutting out a lot of the boxy or kind of muddy 350 range, and then boosting 100 to get that low end in there. And the last thing on this one is we are doing a fast attacks, fast release compression at 3:1, just to, again, de-emphasize a little bit of the attack, give us a little bit more body coming through there. And very similar moves going on the low tom. We're doing that 3.6K boost, cutting 600, and then here we're cutting 560 instead and boosting a little bit lower down at 90. So here's without our SSL channels and with them. Starting to get that modern scooped sound. And then from here, they do differ just in the kind of order of the processing here. On the rack tom, I went ahead and did the low control saturation. This just adds saturation to the low end, so that on small speakers, it'll come through very, very subtle. You might not hear much of a difference here, but on small speakers, it definitely helps. So without it, with it. So adding some saturation, starting at 100. And then escalator, again, doing some of that low mid saturation. Here is without it. With it. And then wanted to clean up the low mids just a little bit more, so without it. So Tom 2, straight out of the SSL channel, doing some more cleaning up in the 650 and 200 range. So without that, now with it, just cleans up the low end, and then we add a little bit of low saturation. Now with it. So toms, very simple, very to the point. Hi-hat, not a lot going on as far as plugins, but what we're doing on the EQ and stuff is fairly aggressive, mainly with our high-pass filter going on here. So here's without our EQ. Then applying our EQ. So what's interesting is that even with as aggressive as this looks, there's not a huge difference because there's not a ton of low end going on here. But we are cutting out just a couple ringing frequencies I didn't like and giving it just a little bit of a high-end boost at 10K. And then what I found in the mix was that these hi-hats and a lot of the cymbals were just a little bit too piercing, and I didn't want to go in and do it with EQ. So adding saturation can really help to kind of tame some aggressive high-end and just in a different way than doing EQ and compression can. So here's without it, and here's with it. So it keeps this like nice crisp high end going on that, I don't know, something about doing it with saturation just kind of shaves off those really aggressive peaks that I find. And we do something similar here with our overheads. So here's our overhead track. Sorry, without any processing. And we're going to do some really aggressive EQ here. So high pass filtering up to 650. And then just taking out some of these ringing frequencies I really don't like. And yeah, I'll show you actually by boosting some of these so you can hear what I'm cutting out. So just brightening it up, cleaning up the low end again, and then just doing a little bit of 1176 compression here to get some of the harder hits and the snare hits, so without it. And then with it. So really just leveling out the cymbal performance there, the digital cymbal performance. But I still find that it helps to kind of level everything out and take away some of the harder hits and some of balance out some of the snare hits as well. And then just a little bit of the saturation trick that we did before, where we don't want to go in and kind of snipe out all of those high mid frequencies, but we still want it to be nice and bright and shiny, adding a little saturation. So without it, now with it. There you go. And then finally, we have the room mic, which room mics are always fun to me. I don't know why. You just be so aggressive with them. So without any processing. So as you can hear, it's not a super natural sounding room in the sense that I can kind of control the volume of the tracks going into the room channel in Superior Drummer, and I really want a lot of snare drum in the room track because just a roomy snare. I think everybody likes that sound. So first of all, we're going to slam it with some compression that's mainly going to be reacting to the snare hits. Sorry, without it. With it. Really brings out the tail end there of the snare room sound. And then we're doing some really aggressive cutting and kind of sound design here by low passing everything up to 4K. So everything above 4K is getting chopped off, and then we're cutting even more of this 5.3 range to give it kind of a more distant sound. And then boosting at 1K. The nice thing about room tracks is that all of that stuff that might sound not the best in the kind of that boxiness that doesn't sound the best in the close mics can sound really good in the room mics. So you get to fill in some of that sound. And we're also cutting this 280 here because, again, low mid buildup is a very real thing. And so here's without the SSL channel. And with it. So you can hear it sounds much further away, which on its own might not be your thing, but in the mix it sounds pretty good. And the final thing I did is I added this EQ here, knocking off some of the low end at 145. So everything it's a shelf where everything below 145 is getting cut by 6 dB. So here's without it. Here's with it. So there it is. There's all of our drums that are individually processed. And so now what we're going to look at is the bus processing. So as I said before, we've got all of these individual drum mics coming into two buses. So we've got a main drum bus and a crush bus or a parallel compression bus. And both of those are feeding a live drums bus for just a tiny bit more processing. So we're going to listen to the straight, the normal drum bus without any processing. Then I'm going to engage it to show you the final, and then we'll go through each piece. So here's without. So sounds pretty good already. What we're going to do is add some bus compression using the SSL compressor 2-to-1 at slow attack, fast release, and this is just going to help glue the drums together a little bit more and give a little bit more attack out of them. So here's without and with. So again, just adds a little bit of glue. I'm trying on this main bus to keep it below 4, just what I shoot for. Then we're going to add in some saturation distortion with decapitator using the T setting, a tiny low cut, and actually brightening up on the tone just a little bit as well. And we're doing this very subtly. This a little bit goes a long way with decapitator. So let's go without it. And with it. So like I said, a little bit goes a long way here. Definitely brightens up the sound, makes it punch just a little bit harder. And then we're doing a little bit of clipping here at the end for dynamics control and to help shave some of those peaks off. So without it. Okay, and with it. Then we're looking at the parallel compression bus. So I'm going to mute the main drum bus, and I'm going to show you what we're looking at for the parallel compression bus. Here's without any processing. And here's all of the parallel compression bus. Let's take a look at what we're doing here. So, first of all, another instance of SSL compressor. The differences here are, number one, we're at a 10-to-1 ratio, so really aggressive, and we came down just slightly on the attack so that we can kind of catch the transient. To me, it just makes it sound like it hits a little bit harder. Keeping the same release, and then we're shooting for like between this 8 and 12 range, 8 to 16 a little bit, mainly on the kicks and snares, with the snares hitting a little bit harder. And this is really going to make the drum shells pop. So here's without it. Here's with it. So as you can hear, just really heavy compression on that. Then adding decapitator, this is going to be a big difference. And we're going, instead of at 1, which was what we were before, we're going to 2. And even just that difference, you'll notice, makes quite a world of difference. Okay, here we go. And now with it on. And we also have punish mode on, which is why it's so aggressive. But again, we can make that quieter and just mix it into taste. And then some more aggressive clipping as well. So again, pretty aggressive sound. We blend it into taste. And here it is with both the drum bus and the crush bus. So as you heard right there, I muted the crush bus out for just a second, and having that extra smack, that extra punch from that really aggressively compressed drum sound on the shells just makes everything come to life. Then on this final live drum bus, what I'm looking at is tiny bit of saturation. I'm just using this Real Tape saturation, which is a stock Pro Tools plugin, just to help glue things together a little bit. So here it is without it. And with it. See, I love that kind of saturation on drums because it tames some of the spikiness, and it makes it just a little bit squishy, it feels like, while still keeping that nice top end clarity. And the last thing here is just a limiter, which is just barely kissing it sometimes, just for some level control. Make sure we keep those nice and tight. So yeah, that is it for the live drums, at least. All right, guys, my phone ran out of space, which is what I was recording this on. So we are just gonna truck on through this, and yeah, let's do the final A/B of where we started and where we ended up. So yep, here is where we started with the MIDI drums. And here is where we ended. And in the final mix, here's what it sounds like. So there it is. If you have any questions regarding any of the drum processing or anything else on this track, please let me know. Please just leave it in the comments or send me a private message, or check out my stuff at joshnewmanmusicproductions.com if you are interested in working together. Thanks.